January 23rd, 1976. Bolton, Greater Manchester. Working as a receptionist, Shelley had got off the bus to walk the 10 minutes or so to her then home on what was at the time a new, isolated housing estate, but is now much more built up. This was close to the Rumworth Lodge Reservoir. She saw two lights over the reservoir, quote, like black lights on a car, which suddenly swept towards her and hovered overhead. Now they were seen as on the side of a strange object, with a flat top and curved underside. A horrible vibration began. She could feel it shaking her teeth. In a panic, she fled home, and at 6:10 p.m. her mother called the police. An officer arrived at 7, and although not ridiculing her, plainly did not believe her, and suggested it had been a low-flying plane. Shelley flatly insists this is not so. There are other facts, which Shelley says she decided to keep to herself. As the object hovered, it was the size of a house, and at rooftop level. It spun round very fast, and then flipped onto its side, spinning more slowly. She is sure it was made of metal, and pouring out light from within. A tremendous force was pressing down on her head from above, pushing her into the ground. Suddenly she was running away, and the object was vanishing high into the sky. She ran into the house and dragged her mother out, paralyzed vocally and pointing at the sky. Her mother thought she had been attacked. It was some minutes before she calmed down. Shelley had got off the bus at 5:15 p.m. and arrived home at 6:05. At least 35 minutes of time are unaccounted for. The next day, whilst having a bath, she noticed a burn on her arm and side. Her parents confirmed this. Then her eyes began to hurt, and she became nauseous and dizzy. A doctor was called, but not told of the burn or the UFO. He diagnosed a severe cold. The symptoms lasted about 2 to 3 weeks. Over this same period, her fillings began to turn to powder, and all those in the top of her mouth fell out. Bottom fillings embedded into her gum, and she needed extensive dental repairs. Her dentist said he had never seen anything so bad before. The pain in her mouth began within an hour of the sighting. 9 days after the sighting, her mother got a phone call while Shelley was at work. It was a man just saying, quote, "I am someone who investigates these things." Began to ask about health problems after the sighting. He would not say how he had traced her. The following day he arrived at the house with a friend and interrogated young Shelley for over 2 hours. Her father does not know why he let these men in, because he knew Shelley did not want to speak to anybody, and especially that she had no desire to discuss the medical after effects. And when they treated his daughter very badly, he does not know why he did not throw them out. Both he and his wife were present during the whole interview and say that they sat there, mutely watching. These two men were in their late 40s and wore smart business suits. They had very sophisticated tape recording equipment, but refused to say who they were or where they were from, but insisted they were not press. They told her that if her father intervened, they would come back again and have to force her to speak to them. Only one of the two actually spoke. The other man, whom Shelley recalls as having only one arm, but both her parents disagree. The only point of major discrepancy in this weird saga, said nothing at any point, not even hello or goodbye. He was like a dummy, the mother suggested. The other man, who asked all the questions, would only say that he was called the Commander. The Commander was very stern with her and seemed to expect incredible accuracy in her estimates of time and size. When she told them she could not be that precise, he got angry. He did not just suggest explanations to her, he tried to browbeat her into believing them. He was particularly insistent on getting her to believe, quote, it was something the army was trying out, and repeated this several times. Shelley refuted this, and she was sure it was not, and eventually he gave up. They also made repeated attempts to get her to talk about burn marks on her body, and refused to believe her when she denied having any. They demanded to see her arms and side, but she refused. This remarkable interview terminated, and none of the families seemed to find it odd until later, when they started to talk about it. A week later, the man called again, and over the phone, under intense pressure, Shelley admitted to the burns, now faded away. The Commander said thank you, and put the phone down. They never heard of him again. Visitors very similar to this were reported by 2 other witnesses in 1978 and 1981. Shelley was also regressed to the visit by the 2 men. She described it. It was far more petrified than during the UFO experience. She said that the men were talking to her, quote, twice, in the mind at the same time as verbally. But her heartbeat and pulse rose to such alarming levels that the doctor had to curtail the experiment. Shelley also related the now expected psychic history, including the seemingly ludicrous statement that as a child she could levitate herself at will. We tried to persuade her that this was probably a hallucination or a form of out-of-body experience, whereupon she insisted we drive round with her to talk to her mother. We did, and her mother claimed it was true. She had once seen Shelley float down the stairs right in front of her. I have not the slightest grounds for doubting the veracity of this case. As you can see, both parents independently verified much of the background, and if we fail to get the medical support from the doctor and dentist, it will not be for want of help by Shelley, who is bending over to assist us in finding them. Incredible as it all is, it has to make one wonder just how many other apparently mundane cases mask something a whole lot stranger at a subconscious level. My suspicion is that if we recognize this possibility, we will be well on the way to understanding the mystery of the UFO close encounter.